Welcome to British Focus, your go-to channel for uncovering the stories that matter most to the UK and beyond. Today, we dive into a global headline that's igniting fiery debates. The world is watching, and for the UK, the spotlight isn't flattering. Argentinian Prime Minister Javier Milei has delivered a scathing critique of the British government, calling out what he perceives as alarming failures in the justice system and an unsettling silencing of British citizens. His bold words have sent shockwaves across the international stage, sparking conversations that are now questioning the very direction of Britain's future. Milei didn't hold back. He highlighted what he described as glaring double standards, systemic failures, and an outright suppression of free speech. It's not every day that a foreign leader takes such an openly critical stance against another nation, but this moment has captured global attention like few others. The question now is, what does this mean for Britain, and why is the world so focused on these remarks? In today's video, we'll dissect Milei's explosive comments, breaking them down to understand the implications for Britain's political landscape. But that's not all. We'll also cover the latest headlines making waves across the UK. There's a lot to unpack, so make sure you stay with us until the very end. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to British Focus. Join our growing community of viewers who are tired of the same old narrative and ready for a fresh perspective. Your support helps us continue delivering the news that truly matters. Let's get started.
Is it not true that right now as we speak in the UK, citizens are being imprisoned for exposing horrifying crimes committed by Muslim migrants? Crimes that the government seeks to conceal? Or didn't the bureaucrats in Brussels suspend Romania's elections simply because they didn't like the party that had won? Faced with each of these discussions, wokeism's first strategy is to discredit those of us who challenge these things, first by labeling us and then by silencing us. If you're white, you must be racist. If you're a man, you must be a misogynist or part of the patriarchy. If you're rich, you must be a cruel capitalist. If you're heterosexual, you must be heteronormative, homophobic or transphobic. For every challenge they have a label, and then they try to suppress you by force or through legal means. Because beneath the rhetoric of diversity, democracy and tolerance that they so often preach, what truly lies is their blatant desire to eliminate dissent, criticism and ultimately freedom, so they can continue to uphold a model in which they're the main beneficiary.
In today's analysis, we're diving deep into the explosive remarks made by Argentinian Prime Minister Javier Milei, whose bold critique of the UK's government and justice system has sent ripples across the globe. What makes his comments so striking? Why have they resonated so widely, and what implications do they hold for Britain's political landscape? Let's unpack this together. Milei's accusations were nothing short of incendiary. He pointed to what he called systemic failures in the British justice system and accused the government of silencing citizens who dare to expose uncomfortable truths. Specifically, he raised the question, is it not true that, right now, in the UK, citizens are being imprisoned for exposing horrifying crimes committed by Muslim migrants, crimes that the government seeks to conceal? This is a powerful claim, and one that touches on deeply contentious issues of justice, free speech, and the role of government in managing societal challenges. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. These comments have sparked outrage in some quarters and applause in others. Many of you watching might agree with Milei's assessment, feeling that the UK has strayed from its values of fairness and openness. Others might see this as an oversimplification or even a dangerous generalization. Wherever you stand, it's undeniable that his words have struck a chord, forcing the UK to confront uncomfortable truths about its governance and the balance between freedom and control. What's particularly interesting about Milei's remarks is how he framed them in the context of freedom of speech, or rather, the lack thereof. He criticized what he sees as a growing trend of labeling and silencing dissenting voices, saying, if you're white, you must be racist. If you're a man, you must be a misogynist or part of the patriarchy. If you're rich, you must be a cruel capitalist. If you're heterosexual, you must be homophobic or transphobic. This critique isn't new, but coming from a foreign leader, it carries a weight that's hard to ignore. Do you agree with this characterization? Let us know in the comments, because this is where the conversation becomes critical. For years, the UK has prided itself on being a bastion of democracy and free speech, yet Milei's words suggest that these very principles are under threat. Is this an exaggeration, or is there a kernel of truth that needs to be addressed? Another point that Milei made, which has been heavily debated, is the idea that the government prioritizes control over fairness. He argued that the system is designed to suppress dissent under the guise of promoting diversity, democracy, and tolerance. Now, this is a heavy accusation, but it begs the question, has the UK's focus on inclusivity and equality come at the expense of individual freedoms? And if so, what can be done to restore the balance? Let's not forget the broader context here. The UK has faced numerous challenges in recent years, from Brexit to the pandemic to ongoing economic struggles. These issues have created a climate of uncertainty, and in such times, governments often tighten their grip. But at what cost? Are citizens really losing their voice in a system that claims to represent them? The reaction to Milei's comments has been fascinating to watch. One viewer commented, "Javier is telling it like it is, calling out the UK government for covering up horrific crimes and persecuting those who dare to speak out. The truth hurts, but it's about time someone shed light on these issues." Another said, "We've become a global laughingstock. This won't change until Labour and Starmer are out." These sentiments reflect a growing frustration among certain segments of the population, but they also raise an important question. Is the criticism directed at the government entirely fair, or are we overlooking the complexities of governance in a modern, diverse society? It's also worth noting that not everyone agrees with Milei. Critics have accused him of oversimplifying complex issues and pandering to populist rhetoric. They argue that his comments risk inflaming tensions rather than fostering constructive dialogue. But whether you agree with him or not, the fact remains, his words have ignited a global conversation, and the UK is now under a spotlight it can't afford to ignore. Now, let's bring this back to you, our audience. What do you think about Milei's critique? Do you see it as a necessary wake-up call for the UK, or do you believe it's an overreach from a foreign leader? More importantly, what can we, as citizens, do to ensure that our voices are heard and our freedoms protected? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We're eager to hear from you. Before we move on, let's also acknowledge the broader implications of these comments. When a foreign leader like Milei takes such a bold stance, it's a signal that the UK's issues are no longer just domestic concerns, they're being scrutinised on the world stage. This adds pressure on the government to address these criticisms head-on. But will they? Or will this be another case of rhetoric without action? And as always, we want to remind you to stay engaged. These conversations are crucial, and your voice matters. If you haven't already, hit the like button and subscribe to British Focus. By joining our community, you're taking a stand for a fresh perspective on the issues that shape our lives. Together, we can push for the transparency and accountability that we all deserve. Let's continue this discussion in the comments, and don't forget to share this video with friends and family who care about the future of our country. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more updates on the stories that matter most. The British government finds itself embroiled in yet another controversy as Foreign Secretary David Lammy faces accusations of misleading Parliament over his contentious agreement to transfer the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. This agreement, originally presented as a step towards resolving decades of colonial legacy, has quickly become a source of political turmoil. Critics argue that Lammy has failed to be transparent about the terms of the deal, with some MPs suggesting he has withheld critical details. The situation has only escalated as Mauritius pushes for even greater concessions, threatening the fragile negotiations. Adding fuel to the fire, former US President Donald Trump has indicated his readiness to veto the agreement should it conflict with American interests in the region. Trump's potential intervention adds an unpredictable layer to the already fraught discussions, further dividing opinions within the UK government. On top of this, campaign groups like Chagosian Voices have accused Lammy of neglecting the communities most affected by these negotiations. Despite assurances from the Foreign Office that officials remain in regular contact with representatives of the Chagosian diaspora, reports suggest that Lammy himself has been absent from key meetings. This has led to growing frustration among those who feel their voices are being ignored in a deal that directly impacts their future. Meanwhile, as 2025 begins, the UK faces a series of daunting economic challenges. Consumer confidence has plunged to -34 in January, a steep drop from December's figure of -27. This decline reflects mounting public anxiety over job losses, reduced disposable income, and the rising cost of living. The recent budget changes, including higher national insurance contributions and the introduction of a new packaging levy, have placed significant financial strain on both retailers and consumers. Major businesses are now grappling with an estimated £7 billion surge in operational costs, leaving many with difficult choices: either absorb the losses, raise prices, or implement drastic job cuts. The retail sector, already reeling from inflation and subdued consumer spending, is feeling the pressure acutely. Companies like Primark have reported a 4% decline in UK sales from mid-September to January, a stark contrast to stronger performances in Europe and the United States. This trend highlights the unique challenges facing the British economy, where prolonged uncertainty and policy changes have dampened growth. Analysts are now warning that the UK may already be in a technical recession. Clive Black of Shore Capital has pointed to Labour's economic policies as a contributing factor, suggesting they have stifled innovation and investment at a time when the country desperately needs a boost. Unemployment figures add another layer of concern. The jobless rate rose to 4.4% in November, with payroll numbers experiencing their steepest decline since the pandemic. This signals a worrying trend that could have long-term implications for the nation's workforce. While Labour Chancellor Rachel Reeves has promised to turbocharge growth through infrastructure and planning reforms, many remain sceptical about whether these measures will be enough to reverse the tide. Public confidence in the UK's economic stability is waning, and without decisive action, the outlook for 2025 appears increasingly grim. These challenges come at a time when Britain's global reputation is also under scrutiny. The controversy surrounding the Chagos Islands Agreement, coupled with domestic economic turbulence, paints a picture of a government struggling to maintain control on multiple fronts. For many, these issues underscore a broader pattern of poor governance and lack of transparency, raising questions about whether the current leadership is equipped to navigate the country through these turbulent times. As always, we want to hear from you. What do you think about the Chagos Islands controversy? Do you feel the government is doing enough to address the economic challenges we're facing, or do you think their policies are making matters worse? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more in-depth coverage of the stories shaping the UK today. Your voice matters, and together we can push for the accountability and change that Britain needs. Prince Harry finds himself at the centre of yet another controversy, this time involving his US visa status. Former President Donald Trump has been urged to intervene and release the Duke of Sussex's immigration records amidst allegations that Harry may have misled authorities about his past drug use when entering the United States. The situation has sparked widespread public interest, with critics questioning how the prince was allowed entry despite openly admitting to drug use in his 2023 memoir, Spare. At the heart of the debate is the Heritage Foundation, a prominent conservative think tank based in Washington, which has been campaigning for transparency on the issue. According to the group, Harry's visa records could provide valuable insight into how U.S. immigration officials exercise discretion in such cases. They argue that if Harry was granted a waiver for his drug history, it sets a precedent that raises questions about fairness and consistency in the immigration system. After all, ordinary applicants are often denied entry to the United States for similar admissions, leaving many to wonder if Harry benefited from preferential treatment due to his royal status. The controversy stems from revelations in Spare, where Harry detailed his experimentation with cocaine, marijuana, and psychedelic mushrooms during his youth. These admissions, while candid, have raised red flags given the strict rules surrounding U.S. visa applications. The law requires applicants to disclose any history of drug use, and such disclosures can result in denial of entry or the need for a special waiver. Yet Harry and his wife Meghan Markle were granted residency in the US in 2020, prompting critics to demand answers about whether the proper procedures were followed. Initially, the Heritage Foundation filed a Freedom of Information Act request with the Department of Homeland Security, seeking access to Harry's immigration documents. However, this request was denied, with officials citing privacy concerns. Undeterred, the group took the matter to court, arguing that the public has a right to know how high-profile cases like Harry's are handled. While the lawsuit was dismissed in September by Judge Carl Nichols, who ruled that the records should remain private, the Foundation has since filed an appeal, hoping that a change in leadership under the newly elected U.S. president will lead to a different outcome. The debate has taken on a political dimension, particularly as Donald Trump's name has become involved. Niall Gardner, director of the Heritage Foundation's Margaret Thatcher Center for Freedom, has called on Trump to use his influence to release Harry's records, arguing that the former president's focus on strict border control aligns with the principles of transparency and accountability. Gardner has publicly stated, Prince Harry should be held fully to account as he has admitted to extensive illegal drug use. The American public deserves to know whether he received special treatment. This call to action highlights the broader tensions between the Sussexes and Trump, who has been openly critical of both Harry and Meghan on multiple occasions. Trump has previously described Meghan as disrespectful to the Queen and suggested that Harry has been used by his wife. These remarks, combined with the current immigration dispute, suggest that the relationship between the Sussexes and Trump's administration is unlikely to improve anytime soon. What's particularly striking about this case is the potential ripple effect it could have. If Harry's visa was indeed granted with leniency, it could undermine public confidence in the integrity of the U.S. immigration system. On the other hand, the release of his records could spark debates about privacy rights and whether public figures should be subject to such scrutiny. It's a complex issue, one that balances the public's right to transparency against the individual's right to privacy. Adding further intrigue is the financial dimension to Harry's residency in the U.S. As a taxpayer in the U.S., he is required to declare his global income, and recent reports suggest this could include the multi-million-pound settlement he received from his lawsuit against British tabloids. While the UK does not tax legal settlements, Harry may still face significant tax obligations in the US, raising additional questions about the financial implications of his move across the Atlantic. So, where does this leave us? The case continues to unfold, with no clear resolution in sight. It raises important questions about fairness, transparency, and the role of public figures in setting an example. Should Harry's immigration records be made public, or does he have the same right to privacy as any other individual? And if exceptions were made for him, what does that say about the broader immigration system? We want to hear your thoughts. Do you believe the public has a right to know the details of Prince Harry's immigration status? Or is this controversy being blown out of proportion? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to British Focus for more updates on this story and other key issues shaping the UK and beyond. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more.